All righty. So hopefully this time we are coming along okay. And before I get started, let's just make sure that our sound is good and we're okay in that area. Yeah, we are. Okay. So thank you once again for joining me on the next episode of Logos Pathos Ethos. I am your host. If you know my name, please don't mention it in the comment section or anything. We'll just give each other the wave or what have you, simply because I would prefer for the conversation to always be about the topic of discussion, not who we are as individuals. Even though you are as an individual an important person, we would prefer that your name remains anonymous because that way you may disagree with some of our other viewers at times. And sometimes the heated conversations can get a little bit personal, and that's what we're trying to prevent. So we just hope that you please keep the names out of the discussion anytime you're responding to myself or you're calling in once we get the calling capabilities up. But yes, so we really would appreciate that if you can just respect that house rule and also be respectful of individuals that have a different opinion of than yourself. And since you're joining the room, thank you so much for attending the tonight's episode. Please, by all means, if you have any questions that you'd like for me to address, feel free to put those questions in the column to the right. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and just jump straight into it because I'm not going to keep you guys long. This is just one of those conversations where I don't have data to back up what I'm about to say. I don't have an in-depth quantitative study with statistics and all of that kind of stuff involved. I don't. Tonight's conversation is going to be a very just brief, thought-provoking conversation titled Faster Horses. So you may be wondering, why am I talking about faster horses? Well, before we get to that point, let's back up for a minute. I think one of the most unique traits a human being can have is a very well developed sense of individuality. I think that being an individual, because we are all individuals, all of us have come to this world by way of the birth canal one at a time. Even if you were a triplet, all three of you didn't come out one at a time. One of you came into this world one at a time. And I think being an individual, celebrating your individuality, I think that is one of the most profound traits and characteristics that we can have as human beings. It is so good to see the younger people these days now greeting each other, saying, "Hello, God. How are you doing, King? I'm a CEO." Using all of those kind of positive terms in terms of describing their sense of self worth, self value, how they see themselves. Now, there's nothing wrong with being a king, a CEO, chief Indian, whatever the case may be. There's nothing wrong with that. I celebrate that. By all means, cultivate that. But now, as I'm listening to people talk, that seems to be more of a term that we use in our speaking rather than it being an attitude that we're living. And let's talk on that for 1 second. Have you noticed how easy it is to become a follower? Have you noticed how it is easier and safer to remain in the group? We have reasons that we like to fit in or blend in with the herd because once we blend in with the group, we can lose our identity and we can just kind of like exist out there among anybody and everybody. We can be everywhere and nowhere at the same time. There's no focus on us as an individual. Like the group begins to protect us. They cover our identity because of just sheer numbers. Because we get lost in terms of those sheer numbers, we feel a sense of safety because we know that, okay, now that there's more of us, there's strength in numbers. You have very, very old prehistoric reasons for having that attitude. And just to get through it real quickly and then we'll move past it. During your early formative years of man, we learned that before we actually began to develop fire, we were subject to all of the beasts of the jungles and in the fields and throughout the caves or what have you, wherever we were developing in prehistoric man. We found that if we acted alone or lived alone, we usually didn't live too long. But if we had groups and we all came together as groups and began to then explore different areas, live together, hunt together, we found that our chances of survival were vastly greater when we did that. That's why whenever you get kicked out of the group, they got kicked out of the group back in prehistoric times, that was instant death. It was the death penalty because they learned that as alone, your chances of survival are slim to none. Versus with the group, you have a fighting chance, if not survive altogether. That's why you have this fear psychologically whenever someone kicks you out of a group or someone rejects you or a group rejects you, because that's those old instincts, those old feelings that are starting to rouse up those old drives, those old fears that we have from way, 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 way back. It has nothing to do with, hey, you're being intimidated by an external threat as much as it is you have these innermost feelings, these innermost fears stemming from your prehistoric ancestors that understood that this was something that you did not want to occur or happen to you because you want to survive. And that was against your ability to survive. Okay. All right. But anyway, going back to the topic. So whenever people start blending in with groups and they go along with the group and they don't think for themselves, they just say anything that comes to the group's mind and they're in support of it. It's because they want the safety of the group. It doesn't even matter whether or not the group is right or wrong regarding what you're talking about. We want the safety of the group. It doesn't matter whether or not I, as an individual, may have a thought or a feeling, emotion that may be contrary to the group. That doesn't matter because I need the safety of the group. Okay. Now, having said that, it is for those reasons why I applaud the individual, because the individual is the one that is putting themselves out at risk of being laughed at. Thank you so much, Felicia Hickman. That is why the individual is to be applauded, because when they go out and they attempt to put themselves on the line, to take the risk, to take the chance of being laughed at, to take the chance of failing and have others to like laugh at you, ridicule you, try to say, hey, you know what, we knew that you wouldn't be no good. We knew that you would be, my case in point, 50 years old and not that many viewers on a podcast, when there are some people that have 1 million viewers an hour, like why are you even doing this? Those are the people. Hello, Danessa. Thank you so much for joining. I miss you. That is why it is so important that the individual be applauded, because they're the one that are taking all of those risks for whatever said reason that they believe in, for whatever risk they feel that they need to take, whatever dream they're trying to chase. They have to take this risk because that dream is so real to them That aspiration is a conviction of theirs that they feel like, hey, if I can just do this, then that will give me some type of inner satisfaction, some type of gratification. I'll be able to help others. But along the way, you're going to endure a lot of pain because you're being an individual. You're being an individual. You're putting yourself at risk, and the outcomes aren't assured. It is much easier to go along with the group and don't have to worry about thinking, staying up late at night, wondering how you're going to improve this product, this idea, whatever it is, this technological advance, this theory you're pushing, whatever the case may be. You know, it's so much easier to not have to worry about all of that stress. And all you have to do is just whatever the group says. Whatever the group says, you also now can be absent of any personal responsibility, because now you can always say, well, it was all of us. We was all thinking this way. We was all getting caught up in the moment. We was going with the flow. We was going with the momentum. But when you're an individual, you can only stand on your own 2 feet. You have to be accountable to yourself for everyone else to see. And that takes a lot of strength. The reason I'm harping on the importance of an individual is because how can I put this? When you are the head of something, you have no one to blame. There is no one to blame. You take full responsibility for whatever it is you're trying to build, promote, market, spread, whatever. And a lot of people don't really understand that when you have to take full accountability and responsibility, even when whatever it was out of your control of what occurred, you still have to be man enough, woman enough, in whatever your leadership position is, to take full responsibility. You as the leader. And when I hear in this society, so many people say that they're CEOs, that they're kings, that they're head of households. I have never heard so much rhetoric proclaiming those attributes that you possess. But as a society, we have just the opposite. No accountability. No one is responsible for their actions. Everybody follows the crowd. Sometimes you have some leaders here and there. You have like your entertainers, your politicians, that kind of stuff. That you by default, they are going to have that position. But in our everyday lives, I've never seen such followers in my life proclaim to be such individuals. And when you ask them, tell me about yourself, because you are an individual, you should be celebrated. You should be recognized. I am just excited to meet you as everyone should be to meet another person, because no one shares these fingerprints. When I die and I break down and rigor mortis is set in, no one will have this pattern on their fingers. Never will they have this pattern in the future. Never, ever have they ever had it in the past. I am an individual. You are an individual. Yes, you are special. You should be celebrated. But the manner in which you're using that term, you're using it in terms of authority. I'm a king. I'm a leader. All of that. But there's no accountability and responsibility, and no individual free thinking occurring. As a matter of fact, not only is there any individual thinking, there's no critical thinking. And if you're going to be a leader, critical thinking is primary. And yet, if you try to have the kind of discussion that I'm having with you right now, most people won't have this discussion with you. They would rather watch something entertaining and then turn right around and go on YouTube or Facebook and go, "Da-da-da-da, I'm a king, God, number one leader." Yeah, it's almost like a contradiction in terms. Groups can't be trusted. Groups are just as bad groups, misinformed groups, ignorant groups. If you want to see the danger of it, look no further than 1939 Germany. Hitler is going to be a Hitler. Donald Trump is going to be a Donald Trump. Martin Luther King is going to be a Martin Luther King. Malcolm X is going to be Malcolm X. Mike Tyson, your mama, your daddy, your kids, they're going to all be who they're going to be. You can't really fault an individual for being who they are and who they want to be. The question is, how the hell did the whole group buy into it? That's the question. And when you see groups of people being misled into a direction that may not be the most conducive for that society, you ask yourself, how? We've seen it more often than not. Groups of people are usually dumb. Usually. Not all the time. Usually. Groups are usually misinformed as a whole. Usually. Another thing about danger, here's another way of looking at the danger of groups and the lack of individuality and critical thinking. I was speaking with a good friend of mine about 21 years ago, to be exact, when I lived in Atlanta. And they asked a very simple question. This is like when the internet is really just, it's like, it's probably like in Pampers right about now. It started early, like early to mid 90s, but now early 2000s, well, now I wouldn't say Pampers. It's probably starting to walk, pull itself up on stuff. He says, Ron, you know what the problem is in modern society? And this is during the era of blogging. Well, what's the problem? He says, the problem is when in history have so many dumb people had a voice in society? Now think about that. I'm not saying, whether or not you went to college or not, that doesn't make you smart, because I know a lot of people with degrees that are dumb as a doornail. And I know a lot of people without degrees that never had degrees. They could tell you the distance from here to the moon and back and do the math in their head. Brilliant. So I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about critical thinking individuals, people that have a conversation that is worth listening to. See, as the old saying goes, small-minded people talk about other people. Big minds talk about things. Our conversations, look at them. Look at where our priorities are. I'm not here trying to preach to you whether or not this is good music today versus music 30 years ago. That's not or 50 years ago. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about whether our kids today are smarter or dumber than when we was older and we was younger kids. We was real smart. Yeah, and your mama whooped your butt too, just like mine did mine. So don't take the high road. I'm not talking about that. I'm just talking about when have we seen on such a large scale groups as we are now, and not just our nation, but the world. We are more entertained by TikTok and the foolishness than engaging in dialogue and discussion that, if it doesn't help your society, at least cultivates you as an individual to make you a better person. We're not interested in that. Only 4 of us are. Thank you for the thumbs up, whomever you are. See, that's the ratio. That's the difference. That's the degree of difference, I should say. Not that you have to be interested in what I'm saying, but be interested in something that is going to cultivate you. That is all I'm saying. Don't misunderstand me. I do love a good laugh too. But when that becomes the modus operandus of your thinking, now we have a problem, which is what we have now. That is the modus operandi way of thinking for large groups of people. So much now that your society gets dumber and dumber and dumber and dumber, which is why I celebrate the individual. Now, all individuals aren't necessarily role models. They all aren't uh, examples to be emulated, in my humble opinion. But again, hey, to each his own, to everyone. But just in my opinion, you have just as many errors in the individual. However, the individual is still the braver individual person because they had the guts to at least put themselves out there. Now, I had to use all of that as a backdrop and only have a few more minutes. I said I wouldn't keep you guys long. I had to use all of that as a backdrop so that we could understand why faster horses. One of the challenges a leader also has is when you're in a position of leadership and you are leading groups of people, if the group of people are not on the same page as you or share the same optimism as yourself regarding of the vision that you have for your organization, company, your group, your church, your school, your family, whatever the case may be, when those that are not in a position of leadership begin to doubt, and there's nothing wrong with doubting. There's healthy skepticism is very good. It's exactly what it is. But when the leader starts listening to the group and starts internalizing the concerns and fears that the people have at the expense of the goal they are trying to reach, that is a real problem because then the entire organization is headed towards doom and its demise. I'm talking to the leaders now that are still with us. One of the worst things you can do is listen to the group and internalize their grievances. It is very important to listen to the people that is following you because your ability to keep the commoner's touch is going to make sure that the people you're leading can always relate to you, which is very important. But in relating to that group, if you begin to take on their concerns, not only is the organization doomed, but also your dream and the direction that you had for the group to get to that dream has now deteriorated. And now you're starting to doubt yourself. Now you're starting to believe that you're an ineffective leader, not because you are an ineffective leader, but because you listen to the group. If the group could do what you have signed up to do, they would be doing it. The fact they are not doing it, the fact they can't do it, the fact they won't do it, all leads to the fact they're not doing it. So do not listen to the crowd, the group, when you have your mission set in front of you, when you have your direction set in front of you. Yes, you will fall to the left. Yes, you will stumble to the right. Yes, you will make mistakes. Look no further than the man sitting in front of you. I have made my own mistakes, but you still have to keep your objective and goal in mind. If the group has an opinion or a alternative in terms of how to get something done, that it would do you a lot of good to listen to them. But in terms of whether you can get there or not, in terms of whether this should be a worthy goal to pursue, the moment you listen to them is the moment that your entire mission is over, and you'll never get anything accomplished, and you regret it for the rest of your life. Trust me, you don't want to be that woman or man. But you do have to listen to them to a degree. but you can't listen to them. I guess you can hear them, which kind of leads to Henry Ford. They asked Henry Ford when he built Ford Motor Company. They said, Mr. Ford, they were interviewing you. How is it that your business, Ford Motor Company, has done so well and remains so innovative and always pushing the envelope in terms of making your cars better? And I think his answer sums up tonight's show so perfectly. When asked, Mr. Ford, how did you grow your company so well? Henry Ford said, one of the secrets to my success is, had I asked the people what they wanted, the people would have told me faster horses. Think about that one. Y'all have a good night.